My lesson plan on the context for learning activity was modeling math with candy, introduction to surface area and volume. The second opinion was on pill design, so using math and geometry to design these pills to see the ratio between volume and surface area of a pill. The problem is that this was designed for sixth graders. They're they barely got introduced to the topic of ratios, and they have previously seen the topic on area. So surface area was what I focused on, and a little bit of volume. It's a little bit of both. So the desired goal was to introduce them to surface area and volume and introduce these concepts and relating them to area that we've seen before, and also addressing productive disposition. So that's kind of relating it to the real life and having the students value math. And then the standards it's hit is finding the volume of a rectangular prism, representing three-dimensional figures using nets. To this actually helps to represent surface areas, and solving real-world and mathematical problems involving area, surface area, and volume. Really big emphasis on this. Students will determine the volume of a prism and a cylinder. And this would be assessed in the Willy Wonka worksheet, where students have to determine the volume of a container they design. It's called the candy container worksheet, and in this one they have to design either a prism, a cylinder, or a pyramid type container made out of cardboard. And if given time, they can either design in class or it would be as homework. Students will then identify geometric solids and describe properties they hold, and this would be informal and formal at the same time. It's going to be through my hook, which is the lote area, based on the loteria kind of bingo game. And in this game, students must orally present and argue why the candy looks or resembles one of the geometric solids given to them. Also, in this game, the student must shout out what geometric solid they won with. Let's look at this hook. The hook is Loteria, so you can see it right here. So it kind of is like a bingo, and in order for students to win, they can either win by doing four across or doing or one of the fours. I I I was inspired by this idea when Google did the Loteria type of game in their front page. And before we do this activity, actually, I have to have students label what each geometric solid is. So for this one would be the sphere, the torus, the cone, and the cylinder. And as you can see, some of them appear more than others. It's because it's the ones we're going to focus on mostly, which is the cylinder, the sphere, and the rectangular prisms, and some pyramids as well. And some of them are totally they're a bit advanced for later on, but we're just gonna see them. So it would be the torus, the cone. We're not really gonna look at the surface area and volume of those, and the epsiloid, which is this one right here. And the reason I picked this one is because of the M&Ms. So an example of this would be, so let's look at our resources. So this is the candy that I'm going to present, and some other ones. So for example, I'm going to have an overhead a candy corn, and then students will look at their loteria and which one of those shapes mostly looks like a candy corn, which one most resembles it, and it kind of looks like the cone. And if it does, they would check mark it, or they can also give them the opportunity to draw it. And then let's say another one I give is the candy donut. So they would check this one out, and the Hershey's bar or a Starburst, they would check this one or draw it. And then another one, this one would be like a candy cane or a Jolly Rancher, and they check it off. And in order to win, the student must have either all four or four across, and must shut out what the last shape they won with. And in order to assess their learning, after they shut it out, they must come to the front of the board in the overhead, and they will explain why they check marked each one and explain each one real quick, like some of the properties as a whole. For example, the candy corn, it looks like it converges to this point, like it kind of looks like pointy and tall and skinny. The donut it has like a hole in the middle, kind of looks like the candy. The starburst does it, like talking about the edges and vertices is something I'm looking for here. And also, since it was based on the context for learning, I felt like this would have helped student E and student C and student A N. These students are they they have difficulty when they rarely engage in the conversation, or they volunteer to answer, or they're too hyper, or they lose interest. And I feel like this game engages them, and the competition of it engages them and gives them the opportunity to get out of their seat and present to the class their ideas. For example, for student C, he's a student with a 504 plan, since he's diagnosed with ADHD, so he has a problem concentrating at times and sitting in a seat for too long. So I also one other activity that I incorporated was the golden ticket activity, and this is an activity that we kind of similarly did in our methods course, where it was group work, where we have four problems and four groups. Each group gets assigned, so each group does all the problems, but then each group gets assigned a different number, and that's the problem they have to present in the whiteboard. And the trick of this for that group activity one is that when they go up there and present their work, they must go without their work. I don't want them to just copy down what they have. I want them to communicate, to redo the problem. And then after we sit down, I designed some effective questions that we could use. So that I would ask the class using either equity cards or asking for volunteers. For student E, he's a student who struggles a bit when he gets called on. I've observed that he's more involved in the discussion and like taking risks when he's more confident, and he's given time to rehearse also. And I feel like working in groups like helps him like share his ideas, and will help him volunteer. So these are some of the questions that I came up with. So, is the solution in problem number one missing anything? Did you come up with something different from problem number two? Can you explain what the group is doing in problem number four? Or did you like the picture number two? Do you agree or disagree that the candy number one and problem number two resembles a cube? Let's look at these problems. So it was one of the most of the problems. The problems in the golden ticket idea, four of them. Two are on surface area, two are on volume, and these you can tell here. These are some of the problems that they are. So one of them is Mr. Wonka designs this candy. He wants it to have these features, and I want you to draw it and find the volume of it. And in the second one, there's two candies. I want you to find the surface area and what it resembles to. I want them to use words like edges and vertices. Something that I considered is using a word bank. This is something that I noticed when I was tutoring uh, a student in Lincoln High School who was doing 10th grade on Civil War. He was writing a letter that he was in either side, but the teacher gave him a word bank, which is really useful. In the word bank, in this letter, they have to use all these words. So someone was like Federalist, Confederalist, the academic language that you want students to be engaging with. So using that word bank, something that I would incorporate in that one. And then after this, I would do the container activity, and it's kind of derived from this other activity that I liked, which is called candy cartons. And this candy cartons activity, she has students design a container that has a certain type of candy, and it can contain at least 18 candies. I changed it to 20. The candies are called TP candy, as you can see when you read my lesson plan. And I want students to be hands-on, so they would be designing this container out of cardboard, and it can either be a rectangular, prism, cylinder, or pyramid. One of the crucial things about this activity is that I want to incorporate a step-by-step graphic organizer. For example, in the box, you can see this is going to be like the prompt, what I'm asking students. And one thing that I noticed in my tutorial site is that the last problem, there was like this big, large body of context, and students just immediately just gave up because of the large body of it. And then, if given time, they would either accomplish this here or as homework. Thanks for listening.